Around 800 AD, a massive spaceship slams into Earth, crash landing right into a lake with a big splash that sends nearby animals scurrying. Two space travelers in high-tech suits stumble out of the wreckage. One's badly injured, and the other drags him to shore, yanks off his helmet, and passes out after flashes of memory hit him. Hours later, he wakes up to find his buddy didn't make it, killed by a nasty chest wound. As he's piecing things together, a robotic voice calls out. It's his AI computer, bobbing in the lake. He fishes it out and tells it to beam all the info it has about Earth straight into his eyes. Talk about a data download. After burying his friend, he wanders into the forest and stumbles on a creepy scene, a whale carcass next to a wrecked empty village. Whatever attacked wasn't human, that's for sure. Suddenly, he feels eyes on him. Spooked, he bolts. But before he gets far, a rider on horseback charges out of nowhere and knocks him out cold. Kainan, the mysterious spaceman, gets nabbed and dragged to a Viking village tucked behind a sturdy wooden wall. At the heart of the place stands a grand hall where King Hrothgar is teaching his feisty daughter Freya how to swing a sword. She's not thrilled about her dad's plan to marry her off to Wulfric, a guy eyeing the throne, and storms out when Wulfric's annoying nitpicking gets on her nerves. Left alone, Hrothgar and Wulfric chat about a brutal attack that wiped out a nearby village. Turns out Wulfric was poking around the wreckage when he found Kainan. Suspicious and unsure where this stranger came from, he hauls him in. The villagers gawk at Kainan's weird outfit as he's paraded through the square. Later, Wulfric pulls him into a hut for a little Q&A. "Who are you?" he demands. Kainan, quick on his feet, says his name and spins a tale about being a hunter from a northern island. The Vikings aren't buying it. They're convinced he's behind the village attack. So they tie him to a pole and leave him to stew. Alone at last, Kainan spots an iron bar and starts working to break free. He's almost out when Freya walks in. Wulfric sent her to patch up the prisoner's scrapes. Talk about timing. That night, King Hrothgar and his trusty warrior, Wulfric, chat again about the brutal attack on a nearby village. Hrothgar decides they need to track down Gunnar, the leader of that ruined settlement, to assure him they weren't behind the chaos. Meanwhile, back in a small hut, Freya quizzes Kainan, wondering if he's the mastermind of the destruction. He swears he's innocent, but as they talk, Kainan slips free, knocks her out, and gears up to bolt. Just then, a guard's horn blasts through the village. Trouble's here. The Vikings leap into action, swords ready, thinking Gunnar's come for payback. But nope, they're dead wrong. Something far worse, a ferocious alien beast, has already snuck inside. It's tearing through the village, taking out villagers left and right. Kainan, somehow in the know, sprints after the creature, but he's too slow. The monster, which he calls a moorwen, snags a guard and hauls him off to the village wall. Kainan shouts its name, ready to chase it down, but the Vikings nab him again. Frustrated, they tie him to a rock, leaving him drained. As he sits there, memories flood back, images of the moorwen wrecking his own world and slaughtering his people. The next day, Kainan gets his chance to speak in front of King Hrothgar in the Grand Hall. He explains he was chasing a nasty creature called a moorwen, a beast that attacked his people with dazzling lights on its tail to trick its victims. Kainan admits he accidentally led it to the village, but Hrothgar just laughs, thinking it's a wild tale. Still, Kynan pleads to join the Vikings on their hunt for whatever attacked them, knowing they'll go after it anyway. Soon, Kynan, now with his own horse, rides out with the Vikings. Along the way, a blacksmith named Boromir offers him some mead, but Kynan spits it out, clearly not a fan. As they travel, Wulfric spots some dead bodies and suggests splitting into smaller groups. Kynan hates the idea, but Hrothgar orders them to pair up and search. Hrothgar and Boromir venture deeper into the woods and find a chopped-off horse head. Meanwhile, another pair discovers burned bodies near a cave and, against better judgment, heads inside. Minutes later, blood-curdling screams echo through the forest. The Vikings rush to the cave and find a massive bear tearing into their friends. A brutal fight breaks out. 2 more Vikings don't make it, but Kanan steps up, bravely helping the group stab the beast until it finally goes down. After the chaos, Hrothgar, impressed by Kynan's courage, sets him free. The village throws a big feast to celebrate their victory over the bear. That night, during the village feast, Kynan slips into Viking gear and snags a prime seat next to King Hrothgar. Wulfric, a bit envious of the new guy's popularity, challenges him to a wild game called Shields. Picture this. Guys line up holding shields to form a wobbly path, and players have to tiptoe across like acrobats. After some fancy footwork, Kanan slips and lands on Boromir, but plays it cool, helping him up with a grin. You can tell these two are starting to vibe. Later, outside the hall, Kanan chats with Freya, who's grateful he saved her dad earlier. He drops a bombshell. It wasn't a bear that attacked her people. It was the Morwen, a nasty creature he warns will come back soon. Mid-talk, Gunnar's crew crashes the party, attacking the village. Kynan and Freya fight back, taking down a few bad guys, while Hrothgar faces off with Gunnar, a hulking, smug warrior. Gunnar nearly crushes Hrothgar, but Kanan swoops in just in time. Gunnar's men drag him off, yelling they've lost this round, though not before he snarls at Hrothgar, accusing him of slaughtering his family. As the village licks its wounds, Freya fills Kynan in on the bad blood with Gunnar's crew. Years back, Wulfric's dad tried uniting the villages against French invaders. Gunnar didn't show. Wulfric took it personally, and now both sides think the other attacked first. Meanwhile, in the woods, Gunnar's gang plots a sneaky revenge strike. One guy steps away to relieve himself by a lake, and bam, the Morwen ambushes him. Chaos erupts as the beast picks them off, looking like a giant wolf with whip-like tails. Gunnar finally sees it's not Wulfric's doing and bolts back to Hrothgar's village with his survivors. Kanan spots Gunnar running their way and swings open the gates. Everyone freaks, thinking he's letting the enemy in, but then eerie blue lights flash in the woods, shredding a guy before turning red and revealing the Morwen. It bolts off, and the villagers finally believe Kanan's warnings. That night, they huddle in the Great Hall, plotting. Kynan says fighting this thing head-on is a no-go. They need a trap. Next day, they dig a deep pit outside the gates, fill it with whale fat oil, super flammable stuff, stick poles in it, and cover it with mud to disguise it as a hut. Over stew, Kynan spills a dark truth to Freya. He's from an advanced race that conquers planets. His people wiped out the Morwens with high-tech weapons, and he helped. After the slaughter, he and his family settled there until one surviving Morwen wiped out his colony and stowed away on his ship. That's the monster wrecking the village now. Kanan beats himself up over it, but Freya hands him her family's sword, lifting his spirits for the fight ahead. That night, Kynan and Wulfric step outside, waiting in the snowy dark. Kynan tosses a torch into the woods, and there's the Morwen right in their faces. They sprint back, luring it into the fake hut. They hop across the poles, but the beast plunges into the oil. Archers fire flaming arrows, and boom! The trap explodes, hopefully roasting the Morwen for good. The village is still reeling from a massive explosion when a smaller Morwen pops up through a well, catching everyone off guard. Freya and her dad, the old king, jump in to protect the villagers, but the beast lands a fatal blow on the king. Just when they think it can't get worse, the original Morwen bursts out of the flames, madder than ever. Wulfric and Kynan team up to fight it, but the monster's too strong. It snags a villager and bolts back into the forest. The next morning, terrified of another attack, the villagers pack up to leave. Kynan convinces Wulfric, now the new king, that they've got to take the fight to the Morwen. They gather a small crew to climb down the well where the baby Morwen appeared. First, though, Kynan needs better weapons. He takes Freya and Wulfric to the lake where his spaceship crashed, diving in to grab a chunk of super strong, lightweight metal from his home planet. But when he surfaces, their boat's smashed. Wulfric's knocked out on some driftwood, and Freya's gone. Kynan hauls Wulfric back to the village and hands the metal to Boromir, who crafts an awesome new sword. Ready for action, the group heads down the well and finds a creepy maze of underground caves. Meanwhile, Freya wakes up in the Morwen's nasty nest, surrounded by corpses. She spots the baby Morwen chowing down nearby. It notices her, but then senses something else and takes off. That something else is Kanan's crew sneaking through the caves. The baby Morwen ambushes them, killing Boromir in a flash, but the group overwhelms it and takes it down. Freya hears the fight and yells for Kynan. He hears her, but so does the Mama Morwen, who's been licking her wounds from the explosion. Kynan, Wulfric, and Freya reunite and make a break for it, ending up at a waterfall on a cliff. Back in the caves, the Mama Morwen finds her dead kid all battered up and loses it completely. Later, as the group tries to escape, she pounces on Wulfric. Knowing he's toast, he goes down swinging, slashing her face while she chomps him. She flings his body at Kynan like a taunt. With no way out, Kynan grabs his sword and charges back into the cave for a showdown. The Morwen's fast, hitting and running, but Kynan slices off a tentacle. Just as she's about to crush him, Freya jumps in, distracting the beast. Kynan seizes the moment, tackling her out of the cave to the waterfall's edge. She clings to his arm, dangling over the drop. In a slick move, he cuts off her hand, sending her plummeting. After the chaos, Kynan decides to stick around in the village. He settles down with Freya and gets crowned the new king, ready for a quieter life after all that monster-slaying madness.